Thank you. Hello. You're back. Sorry for the slight delay. We had a very nice ceremony in the rotunda honoring the Hazleton area girls softball program for their competition last spring in the state tournament. And we had the Swearsville American Legion baseball team who had a very fine year also, was a state champion and participated in the regional championships out in Illinois. And it was a very nice ceremony. But today we're here for a roll call first.
Mr. Bilbo?
Present.
Mr. Haas?
Here.
Ms. Hauk?
Here.
Mr. Morelli?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Ms. Sedman? Here. Mr. Schnee?
Present.
Mr. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Vogt?
Here.
Ms. Wakes? Present. Mr. McGinley?
Present.
All present.
Thank you. This is a public meeting to comment on the proposed ordinance which would amend the 2019 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County. This amendment would allow for the employment of 5 part-time drug enforcement officers in the DA's office. The money that would be provided from the State Attorney General's office to fund those positions. So at this time, people who have indicated they would interest in speaking to the public hearing. We'll begin with Mr. Griffith.
The only question that I have regarding the funding of the task force officers is the ordinance itself. Is that I think the ordinance should be more comprehensive, stating that there actually going to be it will be 5 part-time officers hired by the county, and also comprehensive in the fact that it should say that when the funding goes away, the positions go away. When the commissioner form of government was there and they hired people for grants, that was always put in the ordinance, that once that position was not funded any longer, that position was abolished. That should be put in the ordinance to protect everybody in the county from having positions just grandfathered in after they get in there and the funding goes away. So the ordinance, I don't think, is comprehensive enough, and I would certainly hope that somebody on council would make amendments to it that says we're actually going to get 5 people as opposed to 1. According to the ordinance, it says we will hire a drug force task officer. Yet but Ms. Salavantis, when in her submittal, she said she wanted 5. So I don't understand why the ordinance does not reflect that. And I certainly think that we should have more information in the ordinance that says that they're going to get, that position goes away if the funding goes away from the Attorney General's office. And it would be really nice if the mid-year report, and I know Ms. Hauk asked for this many times, and I have asked for it as well, is the mid-year report does not go into detail enough to give us any information. That mid-year report doesn't even reflect the district attorney's funding for the last task force officer that we funded at $40,000. We don't know if that money was ever received yet. Yet we hired somebody in April or May of this year for that drug force position, but we don't see anything in the mid-year report that shows that line item happening. It's specific. It says that money is going to go into account number 112-4194-460.28, but on the mid-year report we don't see that information from the public's point of view. I think it's very, very important that the public see that that money's been given to the county and we're using it for the purpose that it's intended, and not for a position that's been funded but never filled. So I think the ordinance just needs to be tightened up a little bit language-wise, and I certainly hope somebody on council makes amendments to fix that, because I would hate to think that we're going to get all that money from the State Attorney General's office and not be accountable for it. Thank you.
Mr. Griffin?
Mr. Chairman, council members, and citizens, Greg Griffin, Citizens Opioid Committee of Luzerne County. And first of all, Mr. Morelli, just want to, I haven't spoken before you, so I just wanted to welcome you on behalf of our opioid committee.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank you.
but of course, we're in total agreement with the drug task force officers, and we've all been working very hard in the last year with Josh Shapiro, the State Attorney General's office. Our committee's met with him for 1 hour. Not him, but his second in command. And of course, Rick, your fellow members signed a letter, Luzerne County, asking for a federal drug task force. They asked, and I'm going to get you a copy of it. U.S. Attorney David Freed is considering it right now. So we're getting help from Josh Shapiro for the 5 drug task force officers, and also I think there was one before that of full-time. It's all very good. City of Hazleton signed a letter asking for a federal drug task force, and Wilkes-Barre City Council. So there's 22 council members plus Congressman Cartwright. Our committee hand-carried these 3 letters to Washington, D.C. to our 2 U.S. senators and 2 U.S. congressmen. Plus U.S. Attorney David Freed hand-carried these 3 letters to his superior Attorney General Barr, asking for help for Luzerne County. So I just want to commend council. You know, there's bad times ahead, unfortunately. And I have to disagree with the district attorney. She says that right now we're behind last year's numbers. We're getting calls from the parents who just lost kids in the last 3 weeks. It's going to be very bad in the years ahead. In fact, these part-time officers, and when the U.S. Attorney Freed arrives with his task force, which we think he will, he's promised us more help. It could take years to turn back these fentanyl drug dealers that are coming in our communities and killing our young people. And the worst thing is the junior high school kids are now being influenced. Addicted, be that as it may, we're doing everything can for treatment for those people. We cannot allow the youth to get addicted to this fentanyl. So this is why we need all hands on deck. But I have to commend County Council, Wilkes-Barre Council, Luzerne, Hazleton Council, 22 names signed asking for a federal drug task force. So Josh Shapiro, he's responded to all your requests also, and the district attorney's request, and our group's request for help. But again, you know, you're just doing a great job. No citizen should complain that County Council did not hear them about the opioid epidemic. So can I give this, or this is for Rick, and the other council members already signed a letter, but
Okay.
I'll just keep you up to speed.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gustitis? You're skipping this one? Anyone else in the audience who would like to speak in regards to the ordinance to change the budget to allow for the hiring of the part-time officers? Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I made a comment last meeting, and I asked that the DA come here and speak on behalf of this request, and I guess she's not here. I wonder why. You know, opioid is a big issue. 2018, the state police seized 82.04 pounds. State police did. My only comment is if they're going to hire 5 people at $20 an hour, are they going to find people at $20 an hour? Or could these resources be better used in the city of Hazleton, giving them an additional person on the street full-time versus 5 people part-time for a short period of time? And I agree with Mr. Griffith, both Mr. Griffith, but Mr. Griffith that, you know, when we fund something, it's for the period of the grant. I don't think anything is written in this ordinance saying that this, when the funding ends at the end of the year, that these positions are going to be added to the county budget. And again, I question the DA's ability. I know she's in charge of the drug task force, but I question her ability to run drug operations and at the same time prosecute people. I think there's a fine line between policing on the street and then prosecuting cases that are brought before you by police officers in the communities and in the state. And And so that's why I wanted her to be here to ask her the question, but evidently she's not here today.
Anyone else?
I thought, if I could, Mr. Chair, maybe refresh my memory, I thought when the DA was here, I thought she said that, first of all, I answered Citizen Griffith's question. I think she said the position would run out if the grant fund had stopped, but it was quite a few weeks ago that she visited here. And $40,000 too, that's tough to fund one whole position with $40,000 too, I mean, with all the benefits and everything like that. But I don't know how the grant was written, and I think that would, if we could just take a look at that, that might clear up some questions.
Okay. Ms. Howe?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I do have, I have a couple of amendments that I'm going to bring up when we get to vote on this. The first one is that I do want to amend it to say that it's going to pay the salary for 5 drug task force officers, which is under Section 2 of the ordinance. And then I want to add a third line under where it says add payroll expenses. I want to add a line that says 5 positions of part-time drug task officers shall be added to the 2019 position budget. And then under that, these positions shall be maintained as long as funding from the Commonwealth is available to fund them. So those are the amendments that I'm going to propose when we vote on this.
Anyone else? Just so everybody recognizes, this only changes the 2019 budget.
Right.
Going forward to 2020, unless we include those positions in the budget, they're not there.
Right, but they need to be
People will
added.
remember, in the election department a year ago, when we did the budget, there was a position that we did not include. And that's what happened. That position was vacant and gone.
If I could just say, I think they need to be added to the 2019 position budget, just to reflect that we're
I'm not
adding
talking
them.
about the position budget. I'm talking about the budget per se.
I know, but that's tied to it, and I think we need to reflect that if we have funding for it, that's where it's going.
Anyone else? Okay, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wakus and Mr. Urban, all in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. Moving right to the voting session, please. And again, we'll begin with the pledge in case we have some new people joining us for the voting session. Thank you. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Roll call. Ms. Lawrence?
Mr. Bilbo?
Present.
Mr. Haas?
Here.
Ms. Howe?
Here.
Mr. Morelli?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Ms. Sedman? Here. Mr. Schnee?
Present.
Mr. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Vogt?
Here.
Ms. Wakus? Present. Mr. McGinley?
Present.
All present.
Thank you. Ms. Craig, do you want to speak to the executive session, please?
Yes, as we're required to do so, we're informing the public that council held an executive session prior to tonight's public hearing, and the nature of that executive session was personnel, specifically discussions regarding collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you. Recognitions and ceremonial proclamations. We have one retirement from the county during the past month. Lawrence Grimaud, senior law clerk in the courts. And we also have a proclamation. Mr. Haas had requested that we have this proclamation available today. I believe we have someone from the organization. You want to come to the podium, please? Is that Steve?
Yes.
Steve, is it Conrad?
Yes, Steve Conrad. I'm president of the Plymouth Historical Society.
Okay. You want to read the proclamation and present it to you, then if you would have any comments, you're certainly more than welcome.
Great.
Whereas this proclamation is to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Avondale mine disaster of 1869, and whereas on September 6, 1869 in Plymouth, Pennsylvania, Luzerne County, 108 men and boys and 2 potential rescuers lost their lives in the largest single mining accident to date in the anthracite industry. Whereas the catastrophe produced America's and the nation's first comprehensive mining law, which numerous other states copied. Whereas the Anthracite Heritage Museum, Plymouth Historical Society, Lackawanna Historical Society, PA Labor History Society, and others have worked tirelessly on preservation, maintenance, and education of the site. Whereas a regional conference will be held on September 6th, 7th, and 8th, 2019, to honor the deceased and give tribute to our local heritage. Now, therefore, we, the Luzerne County Council, do hereby proclaim September 6, 2019 is Avondale Day in order to honor our mining heritage and to recognize the efforts of those groups and individuals who have sought to preserve this critical piece of our past. Mr. Kundrat, sent that to you, please. You want to come up? Sure. I want to thank Mr. Haas for keeping us aware of this.
Absolutely.
Well, on behalf of everyone at the Plymouth Historical Society and all of the descendants of the Avondale mine disaster victims, including my wife, Mary Beth, whose second great-grandfather, John B. Evans, was killed in the Avondale. I'd like to thank the Luzerne County Council for this proclamation. It's really, really a good thing. It's really important that we remember this milestone in history. And it's unfortunately, a lot of our history is forgotten, and it's right here, a milestone event in anthracite mining disaster, right here in the town of Plymouth. And it's very good to recognize that and to keep their memory alive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Conrad, I want to share with the public, too, about what's coming up in a couple of weeks. Might be helpful, too. If you want to share, Mr. Conrad, about the program that's coming up, just for the...
Sure.
everybody.
Oh,
It'd be
well.
helpful.
Oh, okay. I almost pulled out the microphone here, Cord. That's for starters, make an entrance. Yeah, it's going to be starting on September 6th up at the Anthracite Heritage Museum. There's a full schedule, which I didn't bring with me. I have our schedule for down in Plymouth, but there is a full schedule online. It's being shared around by the Heritage Museum. Starting on the 6th in the evening, they're having an exhibition of photographs and images of early breakers, coal breakers, around the Avondale time frame. So that would be like the mid-1800s up till 1900. And then on Saturday, the 7th, is pretty much a full day schedule of things going on up at the Heritage Museum and at the Washburn Street Cemetery in Hyde Park section of Scranton, where the majority of miners are buried. They were all of Welsh descent, and they had originally lived in the Hyde Park area in Scranton and were working at the company's DL&W company's mine in Avondale at the time of the disaster. So that's the tie into the Washburn Street Cemetery. There's going to be a great, hopefully the weather will cooperate, but it's going to be a great ceremony there. I believe starting at 11:30, 12, somewhere around there, at the Washburn Street Cemetery. And then there's back to the Heritage Museum for a conference in the afternoon. And they'll also be honoring labor history at that same night with a dinner. And then we're taking things down here to Luzerne County on Sunday, September 8th, starting with a memorial church service at the First Welsh Baptist Church on Shawnee Avenue in Plymouth. And the reason with having it there was the church was newly formed in 1868, and a year later in 1869, when the disaster hit, it's written that they lost a majority, if not all, of their working age men died from their congregation, which was small starting out, had died in the disaster in 1869. So at 10 a.m., we're doing a service there till 11, and then at noon, if the weather cooperates, we will have a ceremony down at the Avondale mine site in Plymouth Township. The Plymouth Historical Society owns 4.5 acres of the former Avondale colliery, and we've been doing a really good job keeping it clean down there and spiffing it up. And hopefully, it's open to the public. There's no charge for the events in Plymouth. You don't have to register. I did bring a couple of flyers here, but we're all over Facebook and all over the internet, and hopefully to see you there.
Thank you. Additions or deletions to the voting session agenda?
Well, I think there was a request to add the CALO grant.
There was a request. It's up to council if they would wish to add it.
Sure, I think it should be added.
Okay, I think everybody received an email today that had regards to the grant that we had approved for CALO, C-A-L-O, and the state has already acknowledged that, and now we have to complete that in order to accept that grant. So we'll add that to our voting session, and that will be number 5 before we go into the ABC work. So we'll have 2 number 5s. Everyone fine with that? Very good. Anyone else? Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? Ms. Saban? Do we have a second? Mr. Morelli? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? None heard. Motion carries. Public comment? Mr. Costitis? You don't want to speak tonight?
What?
You don't want to speak tonight?
I will.
Okay.
Believe it.
Mr. Griffin is done. Mr. Griffith?
Okay, I have comments on agenda items number, 1, 2, 3, and 4. First one is the motion to adopt a resolution entering into a lease for a portion of land for the Luzerne County Annex. That lease agreement is less money this time than it was the last time. And I do realize there's a couple of days, it's a couple of days shorter, but in a county that's looking for revenue, it seems kind of strange that we would reduce a price for somebody to lease property that just leased it 6 months ago. Number 2, motion to adopt an ordinance amending the 2019 fiscal budget. I spoke on that at the public hearing, but I think it also needs to be worded in the ordinance about the health care benefits, and I do appreciate Mr. McGinley's statement that this is only for 2019, but I think we certainly need to make sure that that language is put in there, just to protect everybody and make sure that it's an open and transparent document. There's nothing left to ambiguity. Number 3 is motion to adopt an ordinance adopting the 2020 long-range operational plan, fiscal plan. One thing that's missing from the operational fiscal plan is the revenue side. There isn't any. Well, that's right, it's a spending plan because Mr. Pedri wants to spend all our money. That's the way it works. How about a parking gate to get some revenue in that parking garage so we can pay for those repairs? And then if the jurors have to get a waiver, they can get a ticket. Everybody else in the world has a gate and everybody else has a parking kiosk that you pay, and then you take your ticket and you put it in to get a waiver. I don't understand why Luzerne County can't do that as well to get revenue to fix this parking garage. We're going to spend $750,000 of capital money on a parking garage that needs repair, but we don't get any money from it. We used to get money from it before when it was commissioner form. Now all of a sudden we don't do that anymore. I have to park if I go to Penn Place. I don't get free parking. Anybody comes to the courthouse gets free parking. I just think that's an antiquated thought process that needs to be fixed. People need to park their cars in the parking garage, they need to pay for it. You go over to the Stegmeyer building, the federal building, you pay parking there. You don't get in there for free. You have to park there. Something that needs to be addressed. There should be revenue in the capital plan, not just a spending plan. If the manager wants revenue from council for reserve, then put it in the budget. So the council has a target that they have to hit, a goal. There's a novel approach. Number 4, motion to adopt resolution approving the collective bargaining agreement. Again, the public doesn't get any documentation to see what we're approving. I don't understand that. If you guys have to meet in executive session to discuss personnel and discuss the terms of this contract, you should do that last week. And that way this contract could be put up online for the people to see what we're going to pay for. Not wait until next week to find a collective bargaining agreement to give them 4% raises for the next 4 years. That's ludicrous. It's our money. It's not your money, it's our money, the taxpayers' money. And we need to know where that money's going. And this idea that the Office of Law says we don't have to divulge that until after the vote is nonsense. Look around. Every other place gives the contracts out before they vote on them. I think the school districts do. It's just a new approach.
We don't have anyone else has indicated that would like to speak at this time, but certainly anyone who is welcome at this time to speak in regards to any agenda items. Mrs. Chomsky, anyone? No. Okay, thank you. Moving on. First agenda item is the minutes of the August 13th meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Mr. Schnee, do we have a second? Mr. Bilbo? On the question? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition?
No, one opposed, minutes aren't verbatim.
Mr. Urban?
I'm going to abstain.
2 abstentions, Mr. Morelli and Mr. Bo, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. We're moving over to backside of the page. Motion to adopt the resolution entering into a lease for a portion of land at Luzerne County Annex for use by the Flower Tent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Wakes, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Urban. On the question.
Yeah, I would just like to comment. It appears that, yeah, there are indeed less days in the lease this time, but I thought I saw there is an increase.
That's correct. That was
Is
a
there not?
question that I asked Mr. O'Neill, and he replied by providing to us that the daily rate was higher than the previous daily rate
Right,
by about $2 a day.
yes.
So,
Yes,
because there's less days, the total amount is less.
exactly, but there is an increase, so thank you for that.
Anyone else? I would also say that we added a clause, right, Ms. Craig?
Yes, there was a clause that's added, and it's in red line that, and this was in response to Mr. O'Neill's information at the last meeting that the owners of the flower tent did not vacate the premises immediately at the end of the lease term, so a clause was added that they would have to pay the county daily rate of $50 for every day that they stay over the lease term.
And that $50 a day is more than the rate they're paying while they're renting the property.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Wakes, Mr. Urban. Adopt the resolution for the lease agreement for the flower tent. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Moving down to number 2, motion to adopt the ordinance amending the 2019 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County, and in parentheses, part-time drug task force officer positions.
Presented.
Mr. Snee, do we have a second?
Second,
Ms. Wakes? On the question.
On the question, I would like to offer an amendment. Well,
Let's
few
do them one at a
amendments.
time, okay?
Sure. The first amendment I would like to suggest is section 2, where it says amendment of line items in the budget. The last line of that first paragraph to say Office of Attorney General to pay the salary for 5 drug task force officers. That's the first one.
Okay,
All right.
Second.
so you offer that as an amendment, and
I'll
Mr.
second.
Bo seconds that? On the question? On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Amendment is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay,
Second one?
Another amendment, after the add payroll expenses at line item, I would like to add a line that says 5 positions of part-time drug task officer shall be added to the 2019 position budget.
Now for that as an amendment, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Urban? On the question? Roll call, please.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Yes, Ms. Hock?
And one more, the next, right after that, would say, these positions shall be maintained as long as funding from the Commonwealth is available to fund them.
Second.
Ms. Houk and Mr. Urban? On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Now we go back to the original motion, Mr. Snee, second by Ms. Wakus, with all the amendments as passed, correct? Mr. Snee and Ms. Wakus? You're good with that?
Yeah.
On the question of the ordinance with the amendments, anyone?
Present it.
Roll call. Yes, Ms. Segman, do you have a question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Absolutely yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes,
Unanimous.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on the question before we move on.
Yes.
Again, I'd like to thank Mr. Griffiths and Mr. Vogue, who have formed a team over the last couple of months to bring this attention to lawmakers. And I don't think without their work and their team's work that snowballed out to the public that we would be receiving this kind of money from the government agencies. I mean, it's a start. I mean, there's no question about it that the men in blue out on the streets are outnumbered, but it's a start, and I'd like to thank Mr. Griffiths and Mr. Vogt and your team that meets every week to bring this more to light instead of turning our heads to people dying on the streets. I'd just like to thank you for your time and your service to Luzerne County.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to number 3. Motion to adopt an ordinance adopting a 2020 long-range operational, fiscal, and capital plan for Luzerne County. This was introduced by the manager back in our last meeting in May, and we have up until September 1st to approve it. If we do no action at all, the plan as presented by the manager would become the budget. I've asked Ms. Lawrence to pass out to you some amendments that I believe would be appropriate in regards to the plan. So first we have a motion to adopt the ordinance. Ms. Seidman, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Perry? There are several amendments I have proposed there. Number one is the first one was the security camera project. The value that is in the plan is $350,000, and I'm proposing a new amount of $300,000. It's my understanding that they believe they can accomplish that with that money.
Present.
Mr. Snee, do we have a second for that amendment?
Second.
Ms. Wakus, on the question?
On the question,
Yes.
I'm sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay, what line item is that in the project list?
If you look at the project, it's right on that very first page, that list of projects that Mr. Pedri has proposed.
Okay, so it's 1900.05? Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Yep. Anyone else on the question? Mr. Urban?
You have any type of estimate that shows any preliminary work on this that shows the cost of these cameras and the cost?
They have an estimate of $350,000.
I know that, but do you have any documentation that goes back to that estimate from a company or anything like that?
I would not have that, the sheriff possibly would have that.
Yep,
Would you go to the podium, please?
please.
Good evening. It was about a year and a half ago that we put out an RFP. We actually had about 22 vendors came in.
Okay.
They walked through the project with us, and then we actually had 4 vendors that submitted proposals.
Okay. So you know that this is a cost range then?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all. I'm just trying to make sure that there's accountability for the spending in this county. You know, you know, as a taxpayer, if you don't pay your taxes, nobody forgives anything if you're an individual. And after 2 years, they'll sell your house. You deal with the IRS, it's the same thing. They'll come down and hammer you, and they want every penny. But when it comes to spending, it's a different story. So in this case, you know, I think your estimate is online, so thank you.
Okay. Roll call on the First Amendment.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
The second proposed is the workstation upgrades. The estimate was $353,000. I'm proposing a new amount of $250,000 with the idea that we look to efficiencies and streamline that and save some money in that area by going out and soliciting and getting better financial offerings there. Do we have anyone who would like to present that as a motion? Ms. Saban, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Snee on the question?
Yeah, same question. Is there an estimate of some type out there right now that shows 250,000?
Well, I believe there's an estimate that they have for the 353, but I think, you know, every year the technology gets a little bit cheaper. And I believe as we go forward, this is a 3 or 4 year plan. I think that we could probably look to recoup some savings there.
Correct. The current estimate is $353,000. You can see from the breakdown, the bulk of that is not due, will not be due until 2022. You know, I talked this over with the county administration. We think we can work with that $250,000 number and still get accomplished what we need to get done.
Anyone else? No. We have a motion from Ms. Saban, second by Mr. Snee.
Just on the question, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, just regarding all these proposed amendments, I mean, we've got this giant 911 upgrade project coming to pass.
And you're going to get a report on that a little bit later.
Undoubtedly. But, so I'm just wondering about, I think we should be looking at every nickel and dime to make sure we can allocate towards that. So if the manager can just speak to the urgency of these projects, given this giant one that's staring us in the face, and if any of these potential amendments could be put off or scaled back at all, just with that in mind. You can speak on that, or any of the staff.
Harry, I think that the reason why we're in this position is because we put things off for years and years and years. In my time as county manager, we've now replaced roofs, we've replaced boilers, we've replaced elevators, things that weren't looked at for years and years. Steps. We looked at lighting. We do those type of things. When I took this job as county manager, I didn't want to be known as the facilities guy, but it looks like that's what it's coming down to. This is the amount of money that we need in order to continue to move this forward. Yes, absolutely, we're going to need money for 911. Council has allocated $1 million in the capital plan for that 911 project, as well as we're going to go over any potential borrowings that we may have to do. But looking at these items and you review them one by one. These are items that county administration believes we have to get done. Unfortunately, the parking garage is getting older. Hasn't been looked at for years and years, and we have to review these things. Security camera project is something that we've been working with for some time. We've put a lot of time and effort into security through the support of this county council, changed the entranceway to security, provided sheriffs for the human services department. We are now one of the most secure courthouses and more secure counties in the Commonwealth, Pennsylvania, thanks to your allocations, and this is the next step in that process. And then the last 4 are computer and IT issues. we were just hit by a major cyber attack. So when it comes down to computer issues, and I see how much that we have spent in time and effort in regard to our cyber attacks, we're not interested, in my opinion, to shortchange or to put off. We look at these things very, very closely. These are the numbers and these are the ideas that we think we can work with at this time. That being said, the county council does make the final decision. So if county council just says, listen, Dave, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, but I'm going to put off the security camera project and the IT upgrades and the parking lot, and we're going to put the money somewhere else, that's your decision as well. It's my job to offer the budget to you, and your job to review it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call, please, on the workstation upgrades.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban? Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Just a question. This is to reduce the amount by $103,000.
Yeah, the
That's
new
what this
amount
vote
would be
is.
$250,000.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
10-1.
And Ms. McGinley, the reason for my no vote is I just heard the manager say, to Mr. Hawes that, he didn't want to put things off. Well, he's got an estimate for $353,000, but yet he's going to put things off and try to shortchange IT and give them $250,000. So I voted no. I don't want the cyber attack to happen again. And
Well, I don't think the workstation upgrades are the issue for cyber attack. Moving on to number 3, county parquet garage rehab. The amount that was estimated is $500,000. I have a new amount of $300,000 based on the fact that I think that we can, over a period of time, possibly do some of the work in-house, possibly coordinate some work with other things and cut down on that cost. Again, it's a 3-year plan, and I think it's an opportunity here to put that money aside and have a chance maybe to do another project that's more worthwhile at that time. Do we have a motion for that amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wakes and Mr. Snee. On the question?
what kind of explanation is?
Excuse me?
What kind of explanation does the manager have for this?
I'm going to refer to Mr. O'Neill on this one, or Mr. Plesh, regarding the garage rehab.
We come up to the podium, please.
Specifically, what's the question?
Why is the estimate initially 500,000 and now it's 300,000? What have you cut out? What are you going to do on your own? Give me some rationale. And do you have an RFP showing, or a contract already in place showing that $500,000 was the amount that was going to be spent on this, or is this just a number you made up?
I'm having a hard time hearing you, I'm sorry. Could you?
Mr. Plesh, he's referring to the county parquet garage rehab. In the plan that was submitted, there's a number of $500,000. I'm proposing that we reduce that to $300,000 with the idea that over a period of time, we may be able to coordinate with other plans and other projects to save some money. And I think that's Mr. Urban's question was, do you have bids solicited or RFP out there on the street to verify that 500,000 number?
That's an estimate from not a contractor, but a supplier of the material to crack seal, protection coating, remediate any existing concrete damage. That was their basis estimate on the industry standard. It's not from a contractor or for bids or for anything else.
Okay.
That was their ballpark estimate on the size of and the condition it's currently in. That could fluctuate, it could change a little bit, but that was a good ballpark from a company that does this. They supply this material to a lot of contractors around the country.
So a $500,000 estimate, and now the thing is, can you live with $300,000 to do this job?
To be honest with you, I think you'd be shortchanging yourself to do it that way, to tell you the truth, because at the end of the day, the parkade is vital. You're coming for jury duty, you have to park there. The condition it's currently in is not horrible, but if it's going to last another 20 years in that condition, it needs to be coded the right way and done the right way. Now, if we only spend $300,000 on it, I could change the scope of work. Maybe we don't get some floors coated, and we don't, others. You're just asking to do it down the road and cost you another, maybe $600,000 at the end of the day. I would suggest you spend the whole $500, get it done right, seal it up, lock it in, and then we could all retire, and the parkade will still be there. That'd be my recommendation.
Anyone else? Ms. Saban?
Yes, I want to know, is there any validity to Mr. Griffith's proposal that there be a payment to the garage parking? Has
Well-
it been discussed before?
Well, it has been discussed before. I think, if I'm correct, the 2011 flood that occurred damaged the machinery that was in that parkade, and it has never been replaced from that period in time. And I think at one time they used to have it manned by probably someone in security personnel, but that has not been the case for a long time.
Well, have we estimated the possibility of what revenue, if any, would be brought in on that?
Not that I'm aware of. but
Yeah,
someone
we
else.
haven't reviewed that recently. I mean, like, and it is a philosophical question as well. I mean, should you have to pay to do your county business? If you're coming to do work for the county, I hear consistent complaints in this room about how county's nickel and diamond people, county's nickel and diamond people, and now we want to add a fee to park to come to the county to do your business here in the county. Personally, I don't feel like that is something that the county administration would support, based upon the fact that I think that if you're coming to the county business or government business to be able to do your business, this is the people's building, you should be able to park for free and get over here as easy as possible. That being said, if council does want us to do a study as to how much revenue we could gain from charging a fee and putting in a kiosks and fixing that arm that's been up and down, and what does that mean for when people are leaving, and what does that mean for traffic studies and those types of things, we would be happy to do that. But my own personal, pardon the pun, 2 cents on this would be that that if people are coming to Luzerne County to do their business, they should be able to do so and park in a free manner. That garage was put up by the county commissioners so people could park there and have an easy access to their courthouse. I would love to have free parking at Penn Place. I'd love to have free parking anywhere you possibly could. Unfortunately, there's only so much we can do. That's an area that we can fix it on.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Wakes, second by Mr. Smee.
And Mr. McGinley, this is just a vote from going from 500,000 to 300,000.
Correct. It's only on the amendment. Okay? Very good. Roll call, please.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
To reduce the amount, yes.
Ms. Howe?
No.
Mr. Morelli?
Actually, I'm going to vote no. I'm going to go along with the gentleman's statements about the overall cost, and I also want to go on record. I agree with Mr. Pedri, the fact that I hear it all the time about nickel and diming. I hear it all the time about the $5 fee and things like that. I don't think that people in the county should be paying for parking, so I'll vote no.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Okay. Moving down to the additions. I forwarded you an email that I received this morning in regards to the cooling tower over at the Domestic Relations Building. And I requested an estimate of the cost, and the reply was $50,000, somewhere between $46,000 and $50,000.
This is a late add-on. Mr. O'Neill gave me a... Yeah, you want your mind coming up? Actually, a pretty distressing call today. Busy day. Mr. O'Neill, can you give up to County Council as to what's going on with our cooling tower at the Domestic Relations Building?
Yeah, I'd like to apologize for the last-minute inclusion of this item in wake of this evening's vote for our capital plan. However, we discovered a leak at the cooling tower about 2.5 weeks ago. We had to, we used in-house staff, we replaced the valve, but while they were there noticing that, some other problems were detected. We had an outside contractor come in and do an evaluation on the cooling tower, and it turns out not that that's something we didn't have information on, but the cooling tower has actually been in place for 32 years. The average lifespan for those units is anywhere from 25 to 30 years, 20 to 25 years, excuse me. So it has certainly fulfilled its obligation as our cooling tower for the building. We did have a conservative estimate done again by an outside contractor. The price came at $46,000, and then I recommended to Mr. Pedri in my email message that we leave a small contingency for possible change orders, things that we may not be able to have detected at this point. But that would include replacing the cooling tower and also the pumps that, unfortunately, the seals are failing. They were submerged in the flooding of 2011, and it was decided at that time, because of the funding that was available, that we would simply replace the seals and not the pumps. And unfortunately, that has taken its toll over the years. So that quote includes not only the replacement of the cooling tower, but also the pumps.
Do we have a motion to add this? Mr. Perry, do we have a second?
Second.
Swakis? On the question, you heard Mr. O'Neill's information. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Thank you. And then the last addition would be a creation of a capital plan emergency fund, and that amount would be the $303,000, which resulted from the deletions in the above, and then taking the $50,000 out for the cooling tower. So the total would be $303,000. Do we have a motion to have that emergency fund included in the capital plan?
So moved.
Ms. Wakus, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Seidman? On the question?
Yeah, the question, how's this money accessed?
It's in the capital plan, it'll be a line item, so if it would be moved,
We have to move it, or the manager can just come in and grab it?
I believe the council would have that obligation.
All right, so that's on record. The council has the obligation to do it, not the manager. He just can't come in and snatch it and take
Yeah.
it.
Ms. Craig reminds me that it's a budget, and it would be an amendment to the budget in order to move it, so yes. Okay?
I'd like to offer
Anyone
that,
else?
Mr. Chair, if I could, rather than place these $300,003 in that fund, rather than creating a fund, if we could put that in the 911 upgrades in the capital plan, I'd like to see it there with
You
that
wanna make that as an
anticipation.
amendment?
I could.
Mr. Haas makes that as amendment to assign that to the 911. Do we have a second for Mr. Haas?
I'll second.
Mr. Urban? We could move that at any time to 911. We don't have to do it as part of tonight, but we could move it at any time, okay? So we have the 911 fund. Mr. Haas makes an amendment. Mr. Urban second that. On that question? Roll call
Which one?
on the 911. Because that's an amendment to the capital plan emergency fund.
Ms. Wakus?
No.
Mr. Bilbo?
No.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Ms. Sedman?
No.
Mr. Schnee?
No.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
No.
Mr. McGinley?
No. That amendment fails, so we go back to the capital plan emergency fund. Ms. Wakus and Ms. Saban were second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
If I vote no, where is it going to go? It's just going to float out there?
What's floating?
The $300,000 bills.
I don't think it's floating, it's assigned.
Where else would it be assigned to if you vote no on this? No.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Now, going back to number 3, we got a motion to adopt the 2020 long-range operational fiscal and capital plan for Luzerne County. Ms. Saban and Mr. Perry. We make that motion with the amendments, Ms. Saban and Mr. Perry, correct? On the question?
On the question.
Yes.
I just have an issue with the process. So we introduced this ordinance quite a while ago, and we had no discussion really on this until tonight.
But we had it twice on the work sessions.
Okay, and maybe those were sessions that I missed. However, I mean, I don't know when you sent the proposed amendments out. Was that today?
I worked on it today.
Okay, so I was at work today. I didn't get a chance to look at them or think about them, and I'm sure there were other people here as well who did not get a chance to think about them. And I think, you know, for the most part, they're pretty good amendments. I would have liked to have seen a discussion about this at the last meeting, to talk about some of these proposed amendments at that time.
It was on the work session at the last meeting for any amendments.
But I didn't hear any of these. This is the first time I saw them. So, okay. But the other thing is that when the capital plan was introduced, I asked for a list of projects that are out there. So if you remember back in like 2012, 2013, 2014, we used to get a list of all potential projects, so you had an idea of what was coming down the pike. Not necessarily that we could fund everything, but it was good to have options and to know that although these were maybe the projects that the manager was prioritizing, and with good reason, that there are other things that still need to be addressed. So when we first started talking about the project with McClure and the energy savings project, one of the first questions that people on this council asked was, why didn't we ever hear about any of this stuff before? Like, why weren't the boilers ever on the capital project list or something? We have no idea as a council, at least I don't, of what other potential projects there are. And I know in the past, we'd had a list of some other projects, and we had the opportunity to maybe swap some things in and have some discussion about the projects. We did not have that opportunity to do that. I still don't know what other projects are out there. I would have liked to hear from operations and some of the other divisions about some of the other potential projects that just did not get picked up in the short list that was provided by the manager. That's my only comment. I just take issue with the process.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Thank you. Moving down to number 4, motion to adopt a resolution approving the collective bargaining agreement between Luzerne County and NASFE, the court-appointed unit. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Wakes, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Saban. On the question? Roll call, please.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes, I'll comment after we're done.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Moving down to number 5. Again, we had a late request that came in. I forwarded the email out to you this morning. The email was in regards to CALO, C-A-L-O. It was a Whitehaven development that we had approved the application probably 2 months ago, and they have received the information from the state, and they need an acceptance letter in order to fulfill the application and receive the grant. We have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Urban, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Perry? On the question?
On the question. Well, I actually wanted this added to the agenda after I saw it, because I do think that it's a great chance for us to accept a $1 million grant. However, as I read through the thread of what's provided here, it seems that the county was notified of this August 5th, and there's a 30-day deadline to receive the award. So today is actually the last chance. And so my question is, we did have a meeting on August 13th. Why did we not hear about this on August 13th?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely, because I had no information prior to this morning.
That letter went directly to Callow. I didn't have the letter. In fact, I still haven't seen the letter. And if you review the email chain, on Friday, August 23rd at 12:22, I wrote back, "So do I have this, or I'm waiting on Callow?" I did not have that letter at the time. Earlier today, I received the email from Mr. Yanuzzi that you see here to Tuesday, August 27th at 9:47 a.m. That said, here's the commitment letter on Callow. The following is needed by the county, a signed sample letter form by me, and the resolution by county council. That's the first I've heard of it since that timeline.
So you didn't, because, one of these emails says, "Dear Mr. Pedri, you were recently mailed an August 5th, 2019 award letter." I mean, it seems like the letter went to you. That was why I asked the question.
I did not receive that letter.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Lakis?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. We'll do that in work session. Okay. Okay, moving down to agenda items, county council. We'll begin with authorities, nominations, and appointments. Do we have a motion to open up the nomination?
So moved.
Mr. Vogt? Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Snee, all in favor of opening nominations indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard. Nominations are now open. The first is the Luzerne County Convention Center Authority. We have a nomination, please.
Mr. Chair, I nominate John Pickering.
John Pickering, and that's Mr. Perry. Do we have a second for Mr. Perry?
Second.
Mr. Snee? Any other nominations?
Yeah, I'm going to nominate Ed Harry. He was a good chairman up there. He did a lot of work up there.
Ed Harry?
Yeah, he got a lot done up there.
Mr. Urban?
When he was a chair.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Haas? Any other nominations? Do we have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Mr. Vogt? Mr. Morelli, second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition, any abstentions, none heard. Motion carries. We'll have a roll call, indicate which of the candidates you will support, Mr. Pickering or Mr. Harry. Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Mr. Pickering?
Ms. Sedman?
Mr. Pickering?
Mr. Schnee?
Mr. Pickering?
Mr. Urban?
Mr. Harry.
Mr. Vogt?
Mr. Pickering?
Ms. Wakis?
Mr. Pickering.
Mr. Bilbo?
Mr. Pickering?
Mr. Haas?
Mr. Harry.
Ms. Howe?
Mr. Harry.
Mr. Morelli?
Mr. Pickering.
Mr. McGinley?
Mr. Pickering.
3 for Mr. Perry and 8 for Mr. Pickering.
8-3, Mr. Pickering. Do we have a motion to appoint Mr. Pickering by resolution to the Luzerne County Convention Center Authority?
So moved.
Ms. Wakis, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Snee? On the question? Roll call, please.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakis?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Thank you. Moving, do we have motion to open nominations for Luzerne County Housing Authority appointment?
So moved.
Mr. Vogt, second.
Second.
Mr. Snee, all in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Do we have, nominations are now open? Yes.
I'd like to nominate Kathleen Chernavich.
Second.
Who was the second on that?
Me.
Mr. Vogt, Ms. Hauk, and Mr. Vogt. Any other nominations?
Motion to close the nominations?
Mr. Haas?
Second.
Mr. Haas, and I think Mr. Bo. All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye. Aye. Since we only have one nominee, we'll have a motion to appoint by resolution Mr. Chernavich to the Luzerne County Housing Authority.
So moved.
Ms. Hauk makes that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Bo. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes. Thank you. Moving down to number 6, boards and commissions, with nominations and appointments. Do we have a motion to open nominations for Luzerne County Children and Youth Advisory Board?
So moved.
Mr. Haas, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Perry, all in favor, open nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Nominations are now open.
Nominate Mark Umford.
Second.
Ms. Hauk and Mr. Urban.
Motion to close nominations.
Mr. Vogt moves to close
Second.
nominations. Mr. Snee, second. All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carried. We'll now entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Umford by resolution to the Luzerne County Children and Youth Advisory Board. Who makes that motion?
I'll make it.
Mr. Urban?
Second.
Ms. Hauk makes the second. Roll call.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Motion to open nominations for Luzerne County Farmland Preservation Board.
Presented.
Mr. Snee, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Wakes, all in favor, open nominations indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Nominations are now open.
Nominate
Present the
Ransom Young.
name of Ransom Young.
Second.
Mr. Young, Mr. Snee, and Mr. Urban.
Motion to close nominations.
Second.
All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Since we only have the one gentleman, we'll entertain a motion to appoint by nomination Mr. Young to the Luzerne County Farmland Preservation Board.
So moved.
Ms. Wakes, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Perry, roll call, please.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Hauk?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Motion to open nominations, Luzerne County 44 Airport Advisory Board.
So moved.
Mr. Urban, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Snee, all in favor of opening nominations indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Nominations are now open.
Nominate
Present the
Mayor-
name of Meredith.
Ricketts.
Yeah.
Ricketts.
Second.
Rinkevich?
Second.
Okay, that was Mr. Snee and Ms. Saban. Any other nominations?
Motion to close.
Second.
Okay. Most, yeah, there's more than one opening, and then we have more than one person on the eligibility.
Present the name of William Griner.
Who is currently a member of the board. Mr. Snee, second.
Second.
Mr. Bilbo? I think that's it, right? The two nominations?
Yeah.
Ms. Morelli, you want to close nominations?
I'll close, yes.
Yep, Ms. Morelli closed nominations. Do we have a second for Ms.
Second.
Morelli? Mr. Urban, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carried. Since we have more than two openings and we only have two candidates, we'll accept a motion to appoint Ms. Rinkevich by resolution to the 44th Airport Advisory Board. Who would like to make that motion?
Motion.
Second.
Bilbo? Who's second? Mr. Urban? On the question? Roll call, please.
Ms. Wakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Do we have a motion to appoint Mr. Greiner to the 44 Airport Advisory
moved.
Board? Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Lakis? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Luzerne County Recreational Facility Advisory Board, do we have a motion to open nominations?
So moved.
Ms.
Second.
Wakus, Mr. Urban, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Nominations are now open.
Nominate Scott Lecter.
Second.
Mr. Lechner, Mr. Urban, and Mr. Snee. I believe he's the only one on our eligibility list. Mr. Morelli, you want to close nominations?
Sure, I'll move it along.
Okay.
Second.
And Mr. Urban seconds that. All in favor of closing nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard. We'll accept the motion to appoint Mr. Lechner by resolution to the Luzerne County Recreational Facility Advisory Board. Who would like to make that motion?
I'll make it.
Mr. Urban? Who's second?
Second.
Mr. Snee, roll call.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Motion to open nominations for Luzerne Schuylkill Workforce Investment Board.
So moved.
Ms.
Second.
Wakus, Mr. Urban. All in favor of opening nominations indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Nominations are now open.
I'll nominate Joseph Aquilina.
Second.
Mr. Aquilina, Mr. Bilbo, and Mr. Snee. And I believe he is the only person on our eligibility list, correct?
Motion to close.
Mr. Urban, you're going to beat Mr. Morelli on that? Okay.
Second.
All right. Mr. Morelli seconds that. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition, any abstentions, none heard, motion carries. Accept a motion to appoint Mr. Aquilino by resolution to the Luzerne Schuylkill Workforce Investment Board.
So moved.
Mr. Urban?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Wakus? Roll call, please.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Sedman?
Yes.
Mr. Schnee?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Vogt?
Yes.
Ms. Wakus?
Yes.
Mr. Bilbo?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
On the question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I say this all the time, but every month, people come before us, and speaking for the committee, there's just tremendous resumes coming forward. There's so much talent in the Luzerne County, in the county, that it's unbelievable, these people coming forward with their resumes. They're willing to serve voluntarily, and I thank them for coming forward. But each month, it's just opened your eyes to show you how much people have to offer.
And I think that since Mr. Steve's been serving on the committee, I think he said that comment multiple times.
Yeah, it's just every month.
And I believe that, you know, having served on the committee and attending many of the interview sessions, he's 100% correct. We have some really great people who come and offer their services in one of the capacities. Thank you. Public comment? Yes.
I'd like to thank Mr. Schnee and Ms. Saveman for serving on the committee as well. That was my first go-round recently, and thank you very much. With Mr. McGinley, of course, too. Thank you.
Very good. Public comment, Mr. Costidas. Okay, we've been waiting patiently, Mr. Costidas.
A couple of different things. One, the Chamber of Commerce, which is who's sitting here right now. He's back to the council with another proposal to accommodate the sale of land to Miracle. Miracle can buy what he wants. I have no problem with him. I do have a problem that this is a backdoor arrangement to extend a cause, okay? And the deal has already been made with the two school districts, which they approved this, preempting the fact that it isn't sold yet, all right? Also under that arrangement, they're willing to extend this to school districts, but they're also very happily raise taxes for the property owner, okay? That doesn't make a lot of sense. The school boards better get their act together, okay? Another tall story is with these Chamber of Commerce seeking an extension of the cost benefits and a parcel of land that they own. Why do they buy this land in the first place when they know it isn't any good? Then they put an expense relative to developing a pad and cleanup, all right? And then they say it's contaminated. You know, these things don't make any sense anymore. They owe taxes. They never pay their taxes. They always want a free ride, okay? Now they're sitting here and they're gonna come up and tell you a story and they're gonna sell what they think they're gonna sell. They never pay taxes, all right? The county council, which you have, all right, to discuss and then eventually vote on, is what you're gonna do with this. We already know the answer because we know how you're gonna vote. But in the paper, it's stated also, which goes into much detail, okay? Instead, the county council members have been more receptive to local economic revitalization tax assistance, all right? That makes a little sense, all right? So whoever gets the property still pays taxes on the land, but you have a progressive, all right, arrangement relative to the building and taxes over a period of time. But the other way around would cause they're going to get a free ride for 10 years, all right? And we know what the story is on that one. All right? This county knows so many times how many times the chambers come here asking for forgiveness. $1 million here, $1 million there. We know what projects they've been involved with. And he keeps telling you the same story, all right? We're going to create jobs and this and that, and we're trying to unload real estate. Why did they get into it in the first place, all right? The games are always being played. All right? I have no love for the Chamber of Commerce. I go way back, long before he was born, all right?
Thank you.
So it's going to be up to you.
You're right. Mr. Griffith?
First of all, I would hope that after the public comment's over, we'll get told, the people will be told what the terms of that contract were for the court-appointed unit. Now that the council's voted on it, it should be open record that we could know how many years it is, what's the increase, are they still getting their paid uniforms, all of that kind of things, but more importantly is the increase they're going to get every year is important. People should know that. The council voted for that. This is an election year. KOZ discussion, Mr. Gustitis clearly stated that, but the question that I have is, when does a taxpayer get tax forgiveness? When does that happen? I don't think that ever happens. Or we're Johnny on the spot to give it to somebody else for 10 years. No taxes at all. Not only do they not pay property tax, they don't pay sales tax. They don't pay any tax for KOZ. I think it's unfair for government to take the advantage of a corporation and use it against the small businessman. Small businessman can't come here for a cause. Doesn't work. They don't get it. But a corporation can, because they're going to create jobs. You know what? It's time for that to stop. Corporate welfare's got to stop around here. People need to get their fair share. There's a lot of taxpayers that are losing their homes because they can't pay their taxes. And this council just rolls over and gives a LERTA or gives a KOZ. I just think it's ridiculous. You need to stop that. If they want to move into a building, let them pay their fair share just like everybody else. I couldn't get a cause on my property. I want to thank the Office of Community Development for the Division Street Bridge. I noticed in the paper that that project's going to get started. Kudos to everybody involved in getting that to happen. I know I spoke on it, Mr. Sweeter spoke about it, and a couple other people spoke about it about a year or so ago. So thankfully that project is moving forward, and we're getting money from the Office of Community Development to try and move that along. Hopefully we'll get that done in this very near future. Regarding the parking garage, and I appreciate Ms. Sederman bringing the issue up about the gate. So if Mr. Pedri thinks that it's not fair that people pay to park to use their county facility, maybe we need to move the county employees out of Penn Place. Move them judges out from underneath there. Let the people park there. We have business over there. It's not fair for people to have to pay to park. Mr. Pedri just said that. It's not fair. We're going to do county business. Let them judges and probation officers and everybody and controller and everybody, move them all out of there. Let them pay to park. Or let's give them a place to park. Let's be fair about it. If we can park free over the courthouse, let's park free at Penn Place too. It's not a matter of what's right. It's a matter of keeping the lights on and paying the bills. And I don't say we need to nickel and dime people, but that's just the way it is. When you go anywhere, you pay to park. It's just the way it is. And I know that was an issue that Mr. Lawton brought up that said that he didn't think it was right. So now I guess this just grandfathers over. But we did that for years and years and years. And until somebody raised, I think it was the controller that raised the issue that the people weren't putting a quarter on a windowsill. I think that's how that all went away. So I appreciate Mr. Pedri's concern for the people to come to this building, but how about the people that come to Penn Place? How about moving them judges out? They got enough money to pay for parking. The taxpayers don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can you answer on my contract question?
You will when we go to the work session, Mr. Griffith. Anyone else in the audience who would like to address Mr. Shiner?
Good evening. On August 13th, the council had their meeting at the Dallas EMA building. And one of the items on the agenda was the amendment to the administrative code. There was a handout that was a several-page long opinion from the solicitor's office in reference to that amendment. When did council vote to request that opinion? I don't remember. I haven't missed a meeting since Home Rule started, and I don't remember that coming up for a vote. Can anyone please tell me when that did? What meeting? That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm waiting for my answer.
There's no answer to that.
What do you mean there's no answer?
Exactly what I said. There's no answer to that.
What do you mean? Why is there no answer? When was it voted on?
There was no vote.
Pardon me?
There was no answer. You were asking when the vote was. There was no vote.
Oh, so the answer is there was no vote. Well, then why did the solicitor's office come up with an opinion of several pages on an amendment that was before this council? Somebody had to ask them for it, or is the solicitor's office just weighing in on everything done for this county council?
Anything else, Mr. Shiner?
No. Who requested it? Did you request it, Mr. McGinley, as the chair of council?
Did I request it?
Yes.
I would ask the solicitor's office always to review the resolutions and ordinances and make sure they're correct and in line with the charter and other laws that may be involved.
Okay, so you requested the opinion.
Per se, I don't remember if I request that per se, but I always request resolutions and ordinances be reviewed by the county
Okay.
solicitor's office.
Then you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Yeah, but only the work section.
Here, this way.
Absolutely. Mr. Is this tech? What is it?
Thank you.
How do you pronounce your last name, sir?
Stahovyak, Michael.
Okay. You indicated that you wanted to talk in the work session.
Yes, is this?
This is at the end of the voting session. You're certainly entitled to speak.
Okay.
Or if you want to work the work session, that's up to you.
Work session, fine.
Okay.
My first meeting, I didn't understand.
Mr. McGinley, though, he can't talk till after the work session, right?
Right.
So if he wants to go over an item on the work session and want us to hear your opinion, maybe you want to speak now, or you have to wait.
This is a new item, does not concern what we discussed.
It's not on the work session per se? That answer your question, Mr. Urban?
You can speak now if you want.
Yes, I invited him to do that, Mr. Urban.
Yeah. Public comment.
I do it now.
You want to wait for the work session? Or do you
I'll
want to
wait
speak-
for the,
Or do you want
work
to speak
session.
now?
I'll wait for the comment section. Public comment.
This is public comment.
Okay. Since you're there, you have the microphone.
Thanks for indulging me.
No
You have a
problem.
lot of courtrooms, just the magistrate system alone has 14. When you go to one of these, you're greeted at the door by the sign that says, no weapons or guns allowed under Pennsylvania law 913. Now, if you get Pennsylvania law 913, you look under section E, and it has about each county shall make available or within the building containing a court facility by July 1st, blah, 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 lockers or similar facilities at no charge or cost for the temporary checking of firearms by persons carrying firearms under section so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. To my knowledge, it's free of charge, and then you return them to the person when they're leaving. To my knowledge, this is not the case, particularly at the magistrate offices. I asked the magistrate in my town, and he looked at me like I was the man from the moon. But I mean, you can't pick and choose what portions of the law you want to comply with. So I hope you'll look into this.
If I may-
Also, a side note on that, we have a magistrate office in the Nanticoke Municipal Building. And I have a copy of a study done by the federal government, and I highlighted everything here. Pretty much says that nothing in the Nanticoke Municipal Building meets Americans with Disabilities Act code. Not the handicap parking, not the rear entrance, not the front entrance, none of the restrooms, and there's other things on here. The city says that it would be a financial hardship for them to address these issues in the municipal building. Even though they've had 29 years since the passage of ADA to do it, they still drag their feet. About 4 weeks ago, it came to common knowledge that they rent a warehouse for $750 a month, $8,400 a year, to store unused recycling containers. 6 days ago, it came about that they have a $600,000 surplus in their debt service, and they transferred it, I have a copy of that also, so that they can spend it on something else. And I'm just about positive none of this is to upgrade any of the facilities at the Nanticoke Municipal Building to ADA standards. So unless they receive some type of careful push to start to address these issues, I think council has to ask yourself, do you want to have a polling place there and a magistrate's office that you rent there in a facility that some people cannot even use the restroom properly? It's been 29 years. I'd like to leave these with you if you would. I highlighted certain sections.
Please, somebody would get those from...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for your information and your concern.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Sir, I will assign the sheriff to review the firearm lockers. I know we have the firearm lockers here in the courthouse. I don't know about the magistrate's office. So, Brian, can you please do a review for me and let us know the status for every magistrate's office, and work with the solicitor's office to make sure we're in compliance there. As for the Nanticoke Municipal Building, I'm going to ask the solicitor to work with operations regarding our Americans with Disabilities Act accommodations. Okay.
Anyone else in the audience?
No, I know, but we lease the property.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Urban? Second? Second. Mr. Perry, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, any abstentions, none heard. We'll begin the vote, the work session at,
Mr. McGinley, you didn't do the collective bargaining agreement.
when we get to the work session, we'll add that.
All right.
Okay?
It's on the agenda.
Well, that's got it. This will be more specific. But we will add that, okay? We'll begin at 7:40. Allow everybody time to get to the lavatories and...
Shannon, why don't you do that Nanticoke stuff? Oh, yeah, just so that.
Who's that? Yeah, it's gonna bring it in.